Great, thanks for this. So we have to say we are absolutely thrilled to be here presenting this. It's a unique opportunity for us to really show what MoveAhead does. So myself and Jamie will co-share these presentations and we'll answer questions together. So we've really done that journey together from the start. MoveAhead, what we do, we are moving children in a digital world, and genuinely we don't have to force ourselves to put this sort of health in what we do for the wellness and the theme of this conference, really, because it's exactly what we do. We're really trying to improve health outcomes for children. Who we are, so myself and Jamie are working in DCU, and Declan, you've introduced us. We are part of the ADAPT centers. I'm the associate professor here in the School of Health and Human Performance. We have an expertise in behavioral neuroscience. I've been working with children's movement science for the last 15 years. I have a lot of expertise in data analytics so that I can just use these two kind of hats for MoveAhead. Jamie has similar background than myself, but also has this educational technology and game design aspect that really help us a lot to develop the games. And you're gonna see that in a second. We've been extremely fortunate to have received funding from Enterprise Ireland for commercialization funds that allowed us to build a really great team of young dynamic professionals in the area of back-end, front-end, computer visions, machine learning, as you can see here, and also some game design we have. So the plan is really just to spin out of DCU early 2022. So what you see here is an emerging company with a lot of ambitions, and hopefully you can see those ambitions and how we want to impact children's health. Children's health for us really has reached a point where we have to do something about it. And one of the angles we want to take is tapping into this movement crisis, the fact that the kids aren't moving enough, but the main part we're going to show you, they are not moving well. And if they're not moving well, how can they move often? And Declan, you've used those terms, we're using a lot. Without being condescending, everybody knows we are spending too much time sedentary in front of a screen. So that's a thing that for the adults and really true for the kids. On top of this, we are not physically active enough, okay? The problem that is at the forefront of what we're trying to tap is if you're not active enough, you're not developing the core skills you need to have in life to engage in physical activity. So you end up in that cycle, like if you don't have the skills, you won't participate. If you don't participate, you don't develop the skills. And you get really this kind of massive issue that never happened before. What you're facing is this kind of behavior. What you're looking here is a kid trying to hop or skip. This is typically developing children, okay? We are not talking about any sort of disability here. It's just simple kids that did not have enough practice and playtime to develop the skill they have to have. You must have those skills for long-term participations in physical activity. Running, catching your bus, you need those basic skills. Fitness is part of it. But on top of this, if you're not doing those movements, the core thing that comes up is your lack of confidence in engaging in physical activity. So not only you don't have the competence, but you don't have the confidence. And it's this kind of long-term effect that just keep getting bigger and bigger. And that snowball effect leads to young adults unable to do anything, not enjoying it, and don't really know what to do about it. MoveAhead is going to really tap into those things. Those poor movement skills, we can address them while considering that this screen time is present in our daily life. And we're going to show you that in a second. What we want to avoid with MoveAhead is this long-lasting avoidance of physical activity. We need to be innovative in the way we approach these aspects, and we're going to show you how it works. As facts, screen time in 2020 was 3 hours a day. And we knew at the time, which is now more than a decade ago, that 80% of children were not active enough. The health guidelines ask us, and the WHO is backing up on this, 1 hour of moderate to vigorous activities every day. So in 2010, this 80% of children were not doing it. Try to see the kind of this intersection colors here, that's where MoveAhead is going to tap. What's happening in 2020, and we can blame the pandemic, but that would be too easy. It's actually not the pandemic. This screen time has increased a lot. In 2020, research showed that there is more than 6 hours a day where kids are spending doing screen time. And we know from a parent's perspective, there's negative perceptions in having your kid sitting in front of that screen. The parental guilt is there and we can address it, But the health guidelines on top of this are telling us we have to do something. There is consequences for kids' health. The worst part of this, not only the kids are sitting there, but they keep flicking from for games to next games to next game because there's really no retention, because there's no fun. And we know the kids, they are active and wild and the way we like them to be. Just go and run. And sometimes it's nice not to run, but what we are proposing to do is this in between. Can you be active and still do the screen time you love? So this intersection here is what we call active screen time. And this active screen time is crucial in that sense that this segment is increasing a lot. And you can tell that there's loads and loads of companies are trying to do these things, but that we don't think they're doing it the right way. So the market bestseller, and you can see that Jamie when he's jumping in a second, will show you that there is a lot of appetite for kids in those really successful apps to be active while using their screen.
Yeah, and if we look at that crucial intersection, what we're just trying to point out is that active screen time actually has real unfulfilled potential. So if we think about the first generation, and what we like to consider as the first generation of active screen time, the Kinect and Wii were best-selling games. They were best-selling, fastest-selling consoles, and I think every house in the country and around the world had some kind of Wii. And essentially, we then moved on and progressed to mobile applications where we're looking at Pokemon Go and kids are active and out and about with their Pokemon Go application. And even when we look at the likes of TikTok and Snapchat, we see elements of body tracking there too. So it's no coincidence then that both of these generations are market bestsellers, so best-selling apps, best-selling games, and they have that movement or that active component. What we like to point out here is that they can't track kids' movement and they can't understand their level. So if you can't track the child and you can't understand the level, the next thing that occurs is that we can't up the experience. And that's essentially referring to the challenge level. And so that's really important for children to challenge them at their own level. So it's never too hard and it's never too easy. And when we can't up that experience, or it's a one-size-fits-all approach, essentially what happens is that children particularly, and adults, but children particularly, get bored. So what's needed for these next generation movement apps for kids particularly? Well, there's two core things that MoveAhead point out, and that's children's or kids movement data and also that kids movement science. So both equally important here. And this video will, I guess, pretty much show you that and why that's the case. So I'm just going to show this here. I want you just to have a look at that and have a think about what you think is going on. But you can automatically tell that that's a child. It's not an adult. It's clear that that's a child because children have different coordination skills, they have different body proportions, and it stands out to you automatically. So what I want you to do now in terms of the science behind it is I want you to think, is that good? On a scale of 1 to 100, where would you place it? And I also want you to think about what movement skill is that child trying to do? And so that's the issue when we look at this kind of data, or we look at kids' movement through the lens of adults' data, because first of all, adults don't move like that. Adults won't necessarily perform those skills. So how can we understand the level that that child is at in order to up the experience for that child? And the answer is we can't. So what I'm going to show you here now is that child without that skeleton. So this child, on the scale of 1 to 100, we're up around the 90s because this is a child who's 2 years of age. And if you guess the skill, he's trying to march, or we could call it climb. And whilst typically we'd also involve the arms in this skill, we do that bilateral movement, for the age of 2 on that movement pathway, this is exactly where you want that child to be. And because we now know what level that child is at, their age, their gender, even their ethnicity comes into play, we can meet and personalize an experience to bring them up and help them level up to the next stage. So that's what MoveAhead does. Really at the core of what we're doing is that children's data and children's science. So we're building the largest data repository in the world on children's movement skills, and then we're looking at it through the lens of that deep and I guess rare expertise in children's movement science. And with that then we're building a children's movement platform. So it's an SDK and an API that's specifically built for children's movement, and we think it's the first time that that's been done. And what we do with that movement platform is we allow third-party developers to come along and plug in to integrate movement into their games and applications. And we're talking things like kids play, kids games, we're talking sport, but even smart toys, smart TV elements in there too. And it's all about getting kids moving. But at the core of it, then, it's not just good enough. We go much deeper than that. So we personalize those interactions. It's really understanding this child in front of us, understanding their level, and then personalizing that interaction. So it's never too hard, it's never too easy. And that's how we keep them engaged. More importantly, that's how we keep them improving. That's how we keep them developing these key skills. And so that is the goal of MoveAhead. So our checklist, really, just to put it simply, we integrate children's movements into kids' apps. We cover a wide range of movement skills. I'll get into that in a little bit more. So we start with children like the climb, we call those rudimentary skills. We move more towards fundamental movement skills. So you're hopping and you're jumping and you're throwing. And we even do sport-specific skills there. So your backhand, your forehand, your volleys, etc. So we're analysing that child's movement level so we understand where they're at. And that means we can personalise the play. These are the ingredients and I guess the recipe that keep kids moving, and that's the whole goal. We want to get kids moving and keep kids moving. So just briefly to show you some MoveAhead in action, we look at that climb or that march again for the 2-year-old. We can see good knee lift, good coordination in the upper limb. On the pathway, this is what we would look for from a 7-year-old. We're into a different skill here of jumping, some more fundamental movement skills. We classify that performance, so you can see this child. This is a classification specifically for the child, but we also classify more scientifically or for the parent to push that child along that movement pathway. And then into more sport-specific skills, we're looking at soccer skills here. And then again, we are providing feedback that suits that individual, personalized feedback for the individual.
When we're trying to wrap up what we've presented today so far, is you can see there is a lot of data that is part of what we do and a lot of science. And I think Jamie used 2 seconds ago the term recipe, and I think it's exactly what we think it's unique of what we do. We've developed this framework called Pac-Man, which have all the principles and conditions for motor skill acquisition. We've developed these frameworks and we married it with game design. That means we know the science, we know where the kids should be going and how we guide them there. So we know the amount, the type, and the delivery of core principles. Practice is how we do this. We know how to bring the timers in place, the levels to offer for the kids, so it's never too hard, never too easy. The type of feedback, every kid needs something different depending on their age, their ability, their motivations. We know how to do that. The games we've developed and the video you've seen just before has those kind of core elements embedded in the background. The kids obviously don't see those things, but we know what to tell them. We said earlier on, kids get bored on classic app. We believe with MoveAhead, they won't get bored for those reasons because its core scientific principles are out there and the recipe is there. The level of instruction is key for the kids to engage, to understand what to look at, the type of demonstration they want. Do they want to see them playing, or do they prefer to see a crocodile imitating their motions? We know all those aspects depending on their age. What is important that we know that will be the core ingredient that will keep kids moving and improving.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of wrap up, we're at a really interesting crossroads here because screen time attitudes after COVID have changed because they've had to. We've had forced adoption, and I think particularly from the parental guilt side, we've had policymakers, tell us to bring screens to children because we've had no other choice, and we've seen advantages of screen time that we haven't considered before. So we know children were in school on Zoom, they were taking classes on Zoom, they were socializing, things like Roblox. I know my mum, who's 68, was meeting my nephew most evenings on Roblox to build a restaurant. But that was really important during COVID to keep people connected. And again, Joe Wicks, kids doing PE on YouTube with Joe Wicks and Go Noodle. So the positive impact of screens on our well-being, these are just some examples. And this period of time has kind of allowed us now to look at it through a different lens. And I guess MoveAhead's core goal now is to keep it this way, to keep focused on the positive impact of screens. Yes, there are many negative consequences, but there can be just as many positive impact from screens too. So just in a nutshell, we like this image because it's really takes the best of play in the past, those tried and tested games that we played as kids, that generation to generation to generation, developing key movement skills. So your hopscotch, your skipping, your leapfrog, but it also considers taking the best that technology has to offer in the now. So the world has changed, and so has the way that children play. With MoveAhead, we're focused on giving children the best of both worlds.